So hi guys, welcome back to our video. So today we got to test ride this CB1000R Neo Cafe Racer. So basically it has a very modernized look, yet it has a very retro kind of design with a round headlight and then also a minimalist look and also a very simple flowy line of cut, bob off seat. The tail light is also round, as you can see here. So everything is keeping to the basic retro. The only thing, it has a mono shock rather than a twin shock, and it has a very beautiful single-sided swing arm, which you can see here. So here is empty, so it has a valve actuated exhaust also. Hopefully we can hit the 6k RPM to open up the second valve, but I doubt so because it's a very powerful machine. As we mentioned, it's a bob-off design, so I'm not too sure whether the pillion will feel secure because the space is only here for sitting, and there's nothing access at the rail, so sitting on it might be a little bit insecure. So let us hop on to the bike. Sitting on it is not that bad. In fact, I can flat foot on both feet, so no issue with that. As usual, a street bike is slightly sportier. So let us turn on the dash. So the dash is rather simple. It's a negative LCD kind of screen where you can use this smoke button to cycle through the setup. So, and you have your traction control, engine braking, power, all this in place. Let us try using standard. Okay, we reset the trip A and see how is the fuel consumption. Let's start up the engine. I think it has a auto warm-up function. When you start off, it automatically goes to 2k RPM. The cluster is quite simple also. So you have your hazard light, your high beam, low beam. This is your selector, horn, signal, and then you have a traction on-off here, which you can only trigger on user mode. So let's do a U-turn to get out. Okay, the steering angle is a little bit small, as it's a sports oriented kind of bike. I think I cycle up the gear too quickly, probably because of the high torque. So even if you are at the wrong gear or the higher gear, it still has a lot of punch to push you through. You don't feel that it's sluggish. Or there's a light here, if you can see. It's a rev limiter light. So if you pull hard, so let's find a route that has lesser traffic. It has a lot of pull, which is good. Okay, so it's no light blue, green. I guess it will turn amber or yellow or red when you're on a higher rev. We get to test that light on a highway speed. So on standard mode, the throttle response is quite decent. It's not very abrupt or very violent, which makes it easy to ride on a lower speed traffic like this. And the suspension is very firm. It's adjustable anyway, so if you want to harden it, soften it, you can do so. Well, the bike is quite agile, so you can really flick it around. Let's try the brake. Okay, the front brake is really good, really sharp. So the leg is quite tied up, so it's like your standard sportier kind of street bike. Generally, I'm still using the first two gear only. Maybe if you want, you can drop it to gear 3 for normal traffic, because it's a very high powered bike. You don't really need to get it to higher gear. So let's try the U-turn, see how it does on the U-turn. So far we feel a little bit of heat coming out. Really very mild kind of heat right now. I think we only have been riding it for about 5 minutes. Let's see how later. Okay, quite decent for U-turns, so no issue with that. It's really very flickable, I would say. And the tank has a really nice grip. The ergonomics of this bike makes you feel like you are sitting on the bike rather than in the bike. You are quite high up on the bike rather than you felt that you are centered around the bike. That also contributes to the sportier feel on this bike here, on this CB1000R. So let's try to squeeze through traffic and see how it goes. It shouldn't be an issue because the bike is not very set, and it has a lot of power to zoom you out if you really want to. Okay, we put to neutral. The clutch is a little bit hard. I mean, it's a 1000cc, so it's meant to be stiffer. My personal major concern of riding a inline for a bigger bike is usually the heat management. It gets really hot and your tire will start to sweat when you are riding in slow speed. So far, the CB1000R did fairly well. You feel the warmness, but it's not to the extent that it's really, really hot. Okay, the rear brake is not very strong as compared to the front. Okay, the engine brake is okay. Probably because we are at standard mode. So let us try sports mode. Okay. Same. For a moment, I thought the sports mode will have stronger engine braking. But here only indicate 1 out of 3. Yes, it does feel like it has more, and the throttle is more sensitive. So when you open a little bit, it dash out. It's not as linear as the standard mode. I would say that, of course, the rain mode will be much more mellower. In fact, I don't feel like trying the rain mode because I think that the standard mode is already quite okay for city ride. For slower speed, definitely the sports mode is not very comfortable because the response is too sharp. So once you turn on the throttle, it will immediately dash out, and once you close the throttle, immediately you will get that negative G. I don't know what you call it, but suddenly you will jerk forward and you found a highway. Let us try a highway and see how this thing does. On stationary, you don't really feel that the bike is heavy. Okay, I take back my words. If you tilt it, it's heavy. It's still a 1000cc, so how light can it be? Once I'm stationary, I start to feel the heat somewhere here. The radiator fan is not on yet, I guess. When I'm using gear 4, generally at around 4000 RPM. Definitely you don't need to move up to gear 5 in order to hit the highway speed limit. Let us try. So I'm still at gear 4, about 4.5k RPM, and I'm almost reaching 90. And the light is green, so probably that's the correct RPM. If I go to gear 5, my fuel consumption increased significantly. 24 kilometer per liter now. Wow. 26 speed camera, so we slow down a little bit just to be sure we don't get caught. In case we get caught, we got a good photo. If I use gear 6, I will have to drop my RPM to 3. If I use gear 5, my RPM is around 4002. If I'm using gear 4, my RPM should be around 5. So this is the point where I say most of the class 2 bikes are underutilized because this guy redline at 13, but I can only use up to 5 RPM. So let us drop to 3 and see whether we can hit the 6k mark. Hear out if there's a significant difference on the exhaust. Okay, a little bit, not very significant. Okay, we keep it on higher gear because once you are at lower gear, basically this guy is very sensitive. This is a you don't say moment, but I would say that this CB1000R is really happy on a highway because that's where you really enjoy the bike and this bike really enjoy itself. You see, got a lot of free space for you to twist your throttle. And then I switch to sports mode. Since you're on a freeway, we can be a little bit sportier. And it's very planted. On Singapore speed, most of the Class 2 is planted. I guess if you hit anything above 160, 170, it's not very comfortable on this bike because there's no wind protection, number one. And also, it doesn't have a lot of aerodynamics to keep the bike down, except the total weight of the rider and the bike. Okay, sports mode is a bit hard to ride on one hand because once there's an elevation or there's a dip in the tarmac, you actually twist the throttle a bit. It actually moves the bike. So it's pretty sensitive in that way. Okay, that's the fun part about riding all the big bikes. The other way is to keep your gear higher up to reduce the sensitivity of the throttle because the ratio will be taller and then it doesn't jump that quickly. There's still some workaround. Technically, you really don't need a gear 6 on Singapore road traffic because you're already overkilling the speed limit here. So you see, highway speed overtaking is also quite comfortable because the bike is easy to maneuver around and you know you have a lot of power left in the bike to push through. The only thing you need to take note is you don't cross over the speed limit, get you into fines and some unnecessary trouble. We try the smaller route. It's pretty nimble. I guess we have to go back to standard mode because these smaller routes are not sports friendly. Again, we keep it on a higher gear so it's much more pleasant to ride. Okay. So it's no problem squeezing through traffic. It's not a very wide bike. Ooh. Luckily we got good brakes. There's 103 degrees on the coolant temperature. So we just station here for a while and see how it goes. Whether the heat really irritates us. Okay, I can starting to feel the heat coming up. It's not as hot as I would imagine it would be. Pretty decent, or I would say good for its class. Okay, I know where we should bring it to test out its agility. So let us head to that area now. I find that the seat is a little bit sharp on the edge. Okay, so when you are putting your feet down, you will feel that your inner thigh has an edge pointing to it. It's a little bit uncomfortable. So this part here, it's a little bit too sharp, so probably need to reshape it. I guess probably the other reason is because of my height. Maybe if you are a taller rider, then that shouldn't be an issue because your inseam should be longer too. I find it quite amazing because the fan is already on. Okay, I guess. I don't feel any hot air blowing through. This part is still bearable. Okay, you still can hold it with your hand. So it's not like the extent where you touch it, you will feel burn. And especially for those riders who like to wear shorts, on a short run. So when you tap on it, you don't feel the heat. I still don't feel the fan. Not too sure when the fan will turn on, or maybe it's already on. It's just on a slower revolution. So now we are here. We let the car run through first. So we have some, how to say, runway. Okay, not bad, not bad. It's quite easy to flick around. Actually, the engine brake is good enough. I didn't apply a lot of brakes to slow down before I enter into the corner. Okay, we are out. So that's a very short kind of curvy road that you get here in Singapore. So back to the conclusion of this CB1000R, it's just like an everyday hyper naked bike. It uses a race engine and be tuned to higher torque and then also bring down the peak power to a lower rev range, so it's more attainable. However, I would say mainly it's the styling here that catches a lot of attention because it's a very retro kind of design where the era of the 1990 CB1003, the Super 4, you know, those were the peak era of Japanese bike where they dominated the whole world with performance and reliability at a lower cost. So this resemblance that era kind of bike is very iconic with the round headlight, daytime running light to give it a modern feel, minimalist kind of look, and a very nice curved line on the tank with the red Honda Wing logo. And I think the other plus point for this bike is the heat management. The heat management is done surprisingly well, and actually it did surprise me. Don't get me wrong, the bike do heats up, but the heat is really bearable. I would say it might be even better than some of the mid-sized bike that I rode. It's much more bearable compared to some Conti bike, probably because of the way the header is route, and I don't know. And I believe the fan has been turned on throughout this past hour that I rode it, but I don't really feel that the fan is blowing. That's the amazing part. It's quiet. Probably I guess the wind is being dispersed out evenly, so you don't feel a certain or particular hot spot. Currently we clock about 16 kilometer per liter, so that's pretty, I would say, decent for a class 2 bike, within the expectation range. Alright guys, now we are on the way back to return the bike. So thank you for watching our video. See you on our next one. Bye bye.